Hello, hello. You're saying hi to everybody? Hey, Sloth. How's it going? Good morning. Good morning, good morning. Hey, Danny. Hello, hello. Look, guys, we're hands-free. I know, right? And we get to be hands-free for real. How cool is that? We're structured now. It's a structured carrier, so it's like actually, it's not like this, the like other one that I have that's just for skin to skin. This one like is actually a carrier. That one's not meant to be a carrier. I have hands. We have hands. One-handed skills, but you know, happy to have two. Oh, I was just informed by TikTok that Sloth watches my lives frequently, and I should thank her. I know, she's all wrapped up. So thanks, Sloth, for being a book club member and everything else. TikTok wants you to know that they've recognized you. It was like a pop-up. It was like, Sloth is here often. You should thank them. I thought that was pretty funny. It's awesome to know you can even hit it, but better to use both. I agree. Look, she's so secure. No hands. Oh, I'm thrilled. It's like the best thing ever. And she's content as can be. TikTok is crazy. I agree. I thought that was pretty funny. Like the time when Renee entered, it was like, you better say hi to Renee. I was like, oh, okay, hi, Renee. Like, I feel like I do say hi to everyone anyway, but like, hi, Renee. Actually, this sling, speaking of Renee, was a suggestion from Renee. Renee linked me to this company, and then she was like, you can pick whatever color you want. And then I saw this one, and I was like, you know what color I want, right? I mean, like, let's be obvious for a second. Like, and yeah, anyway, it's just cool. Hey, Isabella, how are you feeling today? And when she's awake, like right now she's sleeping, so she's laying this way, but when she's awake, she can sit up, you know? Are you grabbing my shirt? We're good, thank you. She slept for like 4 hours straight last night, so I know I look a mess, but I feel pretty good. Some comments in this live are filtered to protect the community experience. I don't believe that. I believe everyone in here is nice, and I believe that they are recklessly filtering unneeded things. That is my belief. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Alright, let's get some milk in these cups. How's everyone else doing this morning? What's the weather? Is everyone still snowed in? Or are some of you unsnowed now? I saw Liz's son this morning shoveling snow with his dad. And he's just a bitty boy. He's so cute. I can't believe I have two hands. This is a revelation. I feel like it was me who was filtered. It could have been I haven't seen anything from you since you said the wrap is so meat. Also, this isn't a rush or anything, but I'm generally curious when will Slime Lives be back. Slime Lives will be back in March. Yes, in March. Good timing. Yes, Slime Lives will be back. I plan to make some base this weekend if I can. It's kind of warm here today. It's 7 degrees. LOL, Avery. I know you're not being funny, but you are being funny all at the same time. Getting ready to go to Safari Park. Oh, that's exciting. That's someplace we want to take her. That we want that to be like one of her first zoo experiences because it's so cool. Hopefully, that'll be fun. Yes, huh? Oh, excuse me, guys. Sorry about the yawn. Just waiting for the milk to froth and then we will move along. But I have hands. And I can, oops. Don't fall down. I can tighten it more if I need to and bring her up higher, which is nice. I know. Yeah. I know, she's so content in this wrap. It's true. I just put her in it for the first time. I was like, well, I didn't buy it for book club because the other ones kind of work for book club anyway, but I wanted to test it, and honestly, I love it. This is it came in the mail last night after she was already asleep, or like, they wake up all night, but I wasn't going to put her in a carrier in the middle of the night. But hands-free. And guys, this was on clearance, like when I got it, because they're getting rid of this colorway or whatever. It was not expensive. Like, I've heard so many stories about how expensive wraps are. I think I paid like $45 for this. Totally worth it. Like, I was hearing people, I can't stay late, gym class, talk to you later. Okay, love you, see you. I know, little grunts. It's an amazing price, right? I've heard so many people talk about how expensive these wraps are, and I was like, beans. So I was trying to buy some secondhand off of some of the moms in our group who are past the wrap stage because their babies are older. And then Renee linked me to this company, and I was like, let me just look at the sales section and see what's going on. And it was amazing. So, that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. Oh my gosh, I love having hands, you guys. It's like the greatest gift. I know. You want to come up more? You can, because we can tighten it more like this. Yeah, imagine that. And we still have hands. Yeah. Grunty. She's a big grunter, Jessica. Like, that's her mode of operation constantly. Yes. Oh, man, coffee is good. Delightful. Hey, Jen. Okay, let me scooch back in my chair. Wow, look how happy we are. She loves to be in a rainbow. It's like she knows. I know she can't see color yet, but we're just gonna pretend she can and that she loves this. I love it too, Jen. Look, no hands. Right? So exciting for us. Huh? Yeah. She's out. She is out, you guys. I think she likes how firm it is. Who doesn't love being in a rainbow? Crazy people. Crazy people don't love being in a rainbow. I wanted to just briefly touch on something before we get started, because it's not exactly related to the book we're reading, but I think it bears mentioning. Like, I don't know how to talk about this because it's such a tenuous thing, but I feel like I would be a bad person if I don't say something. You know what I mean? Like, how many times do we hear throughout history, like, you have to be the person that speaks up or whatever? And I don't know if you guys saw the whole thing that happened with the hostages yesterday, but especially, I mean, like, as a human in general, you don't have to be a mom or a dad to care about this, but as a human in general, to find out that they unalived those babies, and then just like returned their unalived bodies. It's truly horrific. And I want anyone who is in our community who is Jewish to know that they have my support. I hope that they have everyone's support. I understand the stances that people have in regards to the two countries, but no one deserves this. That poor family. I mean, it's just any hostage being unalived is bad, but what is the point of unaliving a 2-year-old? You know what I mean? Like, what are you solving? This person doesn't have any information for you. This person doesn't hold any government secrets. It's a 2-year-old. You know what I mean? And I just feel like it's too much. It's too much, you know? So I just wanted to make sure that we honored their memory at least a little bit, you know. And I know in the Jewish community you don't say rest in peace, you say may their memory be a blessing or whatever. I'm not Jewish, I'm not religious at all, you guys know that about me, but my heart is really with those people right now. And I should just turn off the news, because hearing about it is just, I mean, mentally I was just wrecked all night thinking about those poor people who are dealing with those kids being lost. It's just nasty. So it is in a way related to what we're reading, in that both sides of that war want freedom for their people, which I understand, but like, kids shouldn't be involved, right? And I was thinking about the book we're reading and how the baby got kidnapped in this book too, and I was like, my God, it's just everywhere, you know? Leverage obviously is the reason. I know I said there's no reason. There is a reason. It's leverage. But like, there's no reason, you know what I mean, other than just like to have leverage on the parents or the people who care about this baby. So anyway, catch me never leaving the house with this child. Yeah. I know. Tell me about it, girl. Tell me about it. I'm just gonna take one more step and then we're gonna read. Hey, Amanda. Okay, you ready to read? Do you want your head up, or are you content? You content with your head in the crook of my armpit? You want to smell my armpit? It is, Naisa, and there's no babies that deserve that. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what side of the war you stand on. There's no babies that deserve that. It's just not okay, in my well, in this case, not so humble opinion. Usually I don't think my opinion is worth much, but in this case, I think, you know. Ugh. But we love you. I will never let you out of my sight. Good luck ever leaving the house. Good luck. I know she has to leave the house one day. I know she has to go to school. I know all those things are true, but I don't want them to be. I don't want them to be. No. All right, where are we? We are 73% into this book, and we are in chapter 32. Are you just gonna make goat sounds the whole time? She's perfecting her vocal fry, you guys. Oh, okay. Chapter 32. May the devil take you down and break your golden crown, a mortal curse requiring hemlock and hate. The mayor's office is all oiled leather and oak paneling. The walls are lined with paintings in gilt frames, displaying the usual association of horses and saints and men in powdered wigs. An especially noble-looking St. George of Hyle does battle with a dragon the color of hellfire, hounds baying at his side. I know, right? It's a cute little sound. A dark stained desk hulks in the middle of the room. On its surface, between the neat stacks of papers and dark shine of an inkwell, lies a mockingbird. A clawed shadow is cast across it, pinning its wings at precisely hideous angles. Ugh. Its ribcage throbs in panic, and Agnes Amaranth looks away, swallowing hard. Pan croons on her shoulder. I just got the survey that said, how do you like this interaction of this live? How do you like the interaction of this live, Naisa? Am I interactive enough, or am I a robot? Who's to say? Who's to say? She said nothing. Harsh flow, kid. I'm your mom. Be nice. Oh, okay, thanks. Mr. Gideon Hill stands tall at the window, watching the scurry and bustle of the street below, with his hand resting on the iron collar of the dog at his side. The 5 o'clock slant of the light draws deep shadows behind them. The dog faces Agnes first, its tail giving the faintest cowardly wave. Mr. Hill turns to Agnes with a mannered smile, as if she is a necessary but tiresome guest. It's true, TikTok does think I'm a robot. It's super debatable. It's so incredibly debatable, Naisa. And they do think I'm a robot. It's weird.
Ah, Miss Agnes Eastwood, I presume.
Agnes's disguise is a careless one. The wind-swept braid over her shoulder is already threaded with sleek black, and her eyes are boiling back to silver.
But surely Miss Tattersall ought to have shown you in.
The receptionist?
Yes.
Agnes shrugs without looking away from him. She's sleeping. Her head had knocked against her desk with a hollow split melon sound, but her eyes remained peacefully closed. Agnes supposes it was possible that maybe she overdid it. You know what? I gotta tell you something. I am not an advocate for violence, but speaking as a new mom also, since Agnes is also a new mom of about the same age baby as my baby, if someone kidnapped my baby, I might also slam their head into a desk. You know? That's pretty much the only reason I'd resort to violence. You kidnap my baby, you're gonna sleep for a while. Hey, we barely just started, Amanda, like 1 page ago, so you're fine. Thank you. Yeah, right? It's totally fair. Hi, Mom. Say hi, Grandma. I have a new wrap. Say, Grandma, look at my rainbow. Yeah. Let's see. Bella mentioned Princess who slept... princesses, okay. Bella mentioned princesses who slept for centuries and dozing gentlemen who missed entire wars, but she finds she doesn't much care.
How generous of you.
Hill does not appear at the least relieved about Miss Tattershall's fate. His gaze is on her, and it's strange, almost weary, as if he's waiting for her to produce a pistol or a spell from her skirt pockets. Her pockets are empty except for the weak remnants of her witching, the crumbled dust of herbs, a few sweat-damp matches, the waxen stub of a candle. My daughter, Mr. Hill, where is she? She wonders if he hears the shake in her voice and whether he mistakes that shake for fear. Hill strolls past the dark island of his desk and sits, the dog padding meekly behind him. It folds itself beneath the chair, looking at her with sorry black eyes, while its master steeples his hands above the mockingbird. It's writhing, desperate, and it's trapped.
If you read the new city ordinances closely, you will find that specifically revoking the parental rights of known witches or witch sympathizers,
he observes. Yeah, she's mine. She belongs to me. Every ruby-red curl of her hair, every soft fingernail. Agnes feels the absence of her daughter like a weight-spreading bruise on her arms. Hill's eyes are still watchful, calculating, as if he's prodding a caged creature to see what it might do.
She belongs to the city of New Salem, Miss Eastwood, and she will be...
Agnes snaps the match in her pocket and hisses the words August taught her months before, when the city still hummed with springtime, and she thought the spell and the sisterhood could alter the cruel workings of the world. She does not need to borrow her sister's will this time. She doesn't even need the familiar perched like a red-eyed gargoyle on her shoulder. Her own will has mighty levels that could level cities. The room shatters. Bright shards zing through the air as every panel of glass in Hill's office fractures and bursts. In the silence that follows, the September breeze sings through the jagged holes of the window, tossing glittering specks of glass dust into the air. Ink spreads from the cracked inkwell and pools like black blood over his desk. Agnes feels a damp trickle down her jaw, a stinging line across her cheekbone, and Hill appears entirely untouched. He brushes a splinter of glass from his shirt sleeve and continues speaking, perfectly even.
Taken in by the New Salem Home for Lost Angels until such a time as a more fit mother may be found. Or, and in the sliver of space following that word, she feels the jaws of his trap closing around her until I grant you pardon for your past crimes and restore her legal custody to you.
Agnes goes very still. Pan's talons curl into her shoulder. Hill's smile is a marionette's cheery lie, red and white painted over dead wood.
But first, do tell me, do you and your sister still visit the tower?
Do we? Why would we do that?
Well, Miss Eastwood, I've been looking for the three of you for weeks now.
I know, right, Nagisa? The stuff I would do if I were Agnes in this position. Like I said, I am not a violent person, but oh, I would become one very quickly. I would become one. You would be like, I don't know this, Sasha. And I would be like, you don't want to know this, Sasha. Yeah, you and everyone else in this damn city's been looking for us. A summer with Juniper has put a little bit of Crow County back into her voice. She almost wishes that Juniper were here now, half full of horseshit and brave and brass, before remembering that she wants her sisters to remain far away.
And when I look for a thing, I usually find it.
Hill flicks his chin, and the shadow in the room roils and spouts wriggling fingers and reaching hands.
But I didn't find you. I caught glimpses, Mrs. James, running about. A few houses warded better than they ought to be, but really nothing for certain. If the child hadn't fallen ill, if your messenger hadn't flown into my hands, well, who knows?
The mockingbird pants on the desk, open-beaked.
I wonder if perhaps you'd called their tower back again and, hidden your bindings better this time.
Agnes almost laughs at him. It isn't some ancient witchcraft that's kept them hidden. It's merely ordinary women of New Salem, the laundresses, the maids, the housewives who opened their doors despite the risk. Yeah, well, we haven't. And why would he care if they had? What's it to him if they crouch in the burnt ruins of a tower that was once a library?
I wonder if you're telling me the truth.
His marionette smile has worn thin now. Rotted wood is showing through the paint.
The three of you have become very adept at witching very quickly.
His eyes flick to Pan and away.
Did you perhaps, receive instruction?
No. Their teachers were desperate need and decades of rage, the hoarded words of their mothers and their grandmothers and one another. Don't lie to me. Agnes hears the lick of fear in his voice. Oh, sorry, that was him, not her. And sweat pricks her palm. Her daddy was never more dangerous than when he was afraid, and he was always afraid that they might wriggle out of his grasp, and that he was weak, and that he was someone, somewhere, being laughed at.
Well, if you love your daughter, you'll tell me now. Have you spoken to them?
There's something broken about him, Juniper told them, something sick, and it's only now that Agnes can see it, the terror and the madness seeping through the cracks.
Are they still there? And are they hiding from me?
His shadow lengthens behind him, creeping up the wood-paneled wall. It boils with heads and limbs and arms extending at warped, unnatural angles. On the desk, the mockingbird writhes and flutters more desperately, wingtips drawn mad patterns through spilled ink, fragile ribs flattened in a shadowed hand pressed downward. The dog whines high and mournful. Stop! I don't know what you mean. I swear, I really don't. There's a terrible crunch, like china crushed beneath a boot, then silence. The mockingbird is very still. Hill watches her face for another pressing second before his shoulders unwind. His shadow shrinks back more plausible dimensions. He stitches the split seam of his mask.
Very good. Of course, I didn't really think, well, but one never really knows. Now, Miss Eastwood.
He prods the mockingbird into a wastebasket with a jagged shard of glass and lays the glass neatly back on the desk like a man arranging his pens.
I called you here to make an offer. I'm willing to pardon your crimes and grant you custody of Miss... He refers to a typewritten page. Miss Eve Everlasting Eastwood. My, what a mouthful. If you're willing to assist me in locating and apprehending your sisters. This witch hunt has gone on long enough, and I think, well, the people grow discontented soon. Perhaps they'll be doubtful if I don't produce the witches. Of course, this is the choice. It's always this choice in the end. Sacrifice someone else, trade one heart for another, buy your survival at the price of someone else. Save yourself, but leave your sisters behind. Don't leave me, she hears them saying. Agnes feels cold water pooling around her ankles, rising fast. And what's going to happen to my sisters?
Well, that's for the courts to decide.
The water is belly deep now. And what happens if I say no?
Well, then your daughter remains deathly ill in the dubious care of the lost angels. You will wait in the deeps until I catch your sisters, which I will, sooner or later, and they'll burn, just the same, except you'll burn beside them.
The water laps at her neck, icy and black. Hadn't they drowned witches sometime in the way back days? Yeah, well, what if I convince them to leave the city instead? We'll all just disappear. You'll never hear our names again. We won't work another spell as long as we live. His smile reminds her of Mr. Malton's when he told them that their shifts were cut or their pay was docked, soothing and false.
Oh, I'm afraid that wouldn't satisfy my constituents. I'm sure you understand.
His tone turns musing.
It's just the way people work. You tell them a story and they require an ending. Would anyone know Snow White's name if her mother never wore the hot iron shoes? Or would they know Gretel's name if her crone never climbed into the oven?
Hill's smile is now sincere.
The witches always burn in the end, you see?
Agnes does. The cold water closes high above her head. Please. She hates the taste of that word in her mouth, but she says it anyway. Sometimes begging was enough to turn her daddy's fist into an open palm. It would turn a slap into a shout. Please, just give her back. She's sick. And tears are gathering and falling.
I know, dear.
His smile is venom and honey.
Wouldn't you like me to make her well again?
Could he? Clearly he knows his witching, and she and her sisters don't know that much. Who's to say what power this man possesses? Her answer feels inevitable. A choice is made in the moment that she first looked down into Eve's midnight eyes. There's nothing that she would not do for her daughter.
Well, what will it be, Miss Eastwood?
Agnes tries to picture her life after choosing, gray, listless, alone, except for the bitter taste of her own betrayal, the frayed ends of a broken binding. The summer of '93 would blur and fade. A little girl's dream of a time when the three of them were one thing, whole and inviolate. Why can't I speak? We were doing so well, and then I lost the ability to speak. Inviolate. But she would have Eve. She would whisper the words and the ways to her daughter, disguised as songs and stories, in the secret hope that the next generation could take up their fallen sword and carry on into battle. It was what Mama Mags had done and her mother before her, sacrifice in order to survive, and hand their sacrifice down to their daughters. Now Agnes will choose the same. Gideon Hill's smile gleams at her in the shards of the window pane still lying on his desk. The point shines crystal white, sharp as shattered bone. A very foolish idea occurs to Agnes just then, a bolder trade, a third choice. They could catch her, of course, and there would be no fire hot enough for the witch who murdered the mayor of New Salem, their light against the dark. But without Hill and without his shadows, surely her sister could save Eve, and she could flee the city and raise her. They could raise her in secret, surrounded by wild roses and stone. She will need to be very fast, of course. She falls to her knees as if to overcome with grief, and Pan startles from her shoulder. Hill says something insincere about understanding the difficulty of her position, but she can't hear it over the difficult thud of blood in her ears. She fumbles with the stub of candle wax from her pocket and draws an X on the polished parquet. She covers her face with her hands and whispers the words into her palm. A hard line of Latin. Heat billows in her chest, burning back the cold water. Her hair drifts gently upward, as if gravity is absent-minded as a god who has forgotten her for this single, desperate second. And beneath his chair, Hill's dog whines. She thinks of her sisters, Juniper, who could not hesitate, and Bella, who would not miss. She thinks of her daughter. She leaps. The glass is in her hand and driving toward Hill's left eye before he can even flinch, almost before he can blink. The point parts the fine gold of his lashes. She braces for the wet puncture of his eye and the scrape of bone against glass, but it doesn't come. The shard, scream, Hill,
off of Hill's face and bites into the desktop instead, slicing Agnes's palm. There's an airless moment while both of them look down at the red slicked glass before a dozen shadowed hands claw toward her. They wrap around her wrists and ankles, slick and cold, and force her backward toward his desk, limbs wrench and splay. She thinks of the mockingbird twisting and turning. Gideon Hill looks down at her with a pair of watery, pink-rimmed eyes, entirely unhurt. He gives her a pitying shake of his head.
I do admire your spirit, Miss Eastwood. Truly, I do. But please understand that I'm not going to be harmed by nursery rhymes or bits of glass. I'm going to ask you a final time.
A black shape dives between them, talons outstretched. The claws rake. Blood blooms, and then the dog is barking hysterically, and Hill is screaming, and another shadowed hand is rising into the air, reaching for her hawk. Pan is already gone, vanished back into the elsewhere. Hill is left panting and powerless, blinking blood from his eyes, and touching the ragged edge of 3 deep-furrowed brows Pan scored across his face. He reels. His painted mask is split. Beneath it, Agnes sees raw, wild terror.
No, how dare you? How dare you? You shut up, Kane.
The black dog ceases her yelping. Red drips from Hill's chin. His face is someplace far beyond fury, beyond gray and still, and Agnes realizes distantly that she knows that face, that she's seen it reflected back at her from her sisters, the terrible resignation of someone who's accustomed to pain, who suffered too many blows, too young, and is waiting always for the next to fall. Hill meets her eyes, and she wonders if he will kill her now, if he'll crush her like the bird that was in his fist for the crime of seeing him bleed. The shadow tightens around her ankles, presses against her ribs, and she feels the scrape and pop of cartilage and the grind of bone against bone before it flicks and a finger is dismissing and sending her skidding off backwards towards the desk. He reaches into his breast pocket, and Agnes flinches, thinking of pistols or knives or magic wands, but the thing that he withdraws is a small, soft, perfectly innocent, tiny curl of hair. And Agnes thinks it's brown or maybe chestnut until the light catches it, and the curl shines a deep bonfire red. She would prefer he had pulled a knife.
If you ever want to see your daughter again, if you want to recover from the fever, you and your sisters will be in St. George Square tomorrow before sundown.
Agnes looks at the blood still weeping from his wounds. It's ordinary blood, red and wet. Yes, she whispers. All right. Good morning. Hey, Tricia.
Good. Now you get out.
Agnes does as she's told. She does not run this time. She walks, steady and upright, following the lines that lead back to her sisters, hardly noticing when passers-by scurry out of her way. She should be despairing, regretting every choice that led her here to this last and worst one. But no, she isn't. Instead, she's merely thinking, turning pieces over and over again in her mind like stone. She fears his face, ancient and terrible, a children's story about witches who did not die when they should have. The bite of glass is in her palm, and the shine of Hill's blood. A thought is forming, surfacing like a leviathan from the black. You're not invincible, Gideon Hill, she thinks. And if he's not invincible, if he can bleed and break and die like any other man, then he should never have touched a single hair on her daughter's head. Juniper feels her sister drawing closer like gathering storm. Bella and Cleo wait with her, huddled together in the half-dark of the South Sybil boarding house, their eyes meeting sometimes, then falling away from one another. The room is silent except for the occasional rustle of skirts, the brush of feathers in the shadows. Footsteps ring like mallets on the stairs, and doors scrape. Agnes steps into the room looking 50 years older and 100 years meaner. Blood crusts her fingertips and bruises show on her wrists. Milk weeps down her blouse, and the sight of those stains is a knife between Juniper's ribs. Pan trills on Agnes's shoulder low, mourningful, and Strix answers back.
What happened? Where's Eve? Juniper's voice cracks over the name. Eve, who is ruby red innocence, who's tiny and furious and perfect in some way that Juniper doesn't understand but wants fiercely to protect, who might still be safe without her mother if it wasn't for Juniper and her troublemaking. Agnes doesn't appear to have heard her. We're gonna need more candles. I have 3, I think. Maybe matches will do. And maiden's blood and crone's tears. Lord, I've got the milk. Everyone knows that. She scurries around the room as she speaks, rattling through her drawers. Juniper's eyes meet Bella's, and Cleo asks gently, Agnes, why do you need candles? Agnes finds a handful of candle stubs in a crate beneath her bed and arranges them in a hurried circle, muttering to herself. She looks perfectly deranged. Agnes, Bella's voice got even gentler than Cleo's. What are you doing? But Juniper already knows, and so does Bella, judging by the tremble of her fingers. Yeah, well, she's calling back the lost ways of Avalon. Again. Agnes doesn't pause. She doesn't even look up. But why? Bella sounds very close to tears now. Because I'd like a talk with the last 3. A small silence follows this announcement. Even Cleo's mouth hangs open. Her journalist's composure is overcome at last, and Juniper says, as casually as she can, Sure, yeah, but like the thing is, though, and I don't want to upset you, but the last 3 are dead. Agnes makes a faint noise of irritation at such nitpicking. Real dead, exceptionally dead. There are legends and stories about how dead they really are. You might have heard some of those stories. I have. Yes, Agnes acknowledges. Still. This is apparently too much for Bella, who wails, What is wrong with you, Agnes? There's nothing left. Agnes doesn't look up. What about Yulia's story? What about the witch who bound her heart to a needle or an egg or whatever it was, then she lived forever? It was a fable. It was a myth. And how many of our spells came from fables, huh? What if it's more than a myth? Bella looks as if she's concerned, actually tearing her hair in frustration. No, it isn't possible. Agnes raises her head from her candled circle and meets their eyes. She should look like a grief-struck madwoman, broken, hopeless, but instead she looks like an angel, cast down from heaven, struggling back to her feet with blood on her teeth, ready to make her war with God himself. I do not, she says very clearly, give a shit. She withdraws a rust-smeared shard of glass from her pocket and hands it to Juniper. Her eyes say, please, and Juniper can't refuse her. She slices the glass across her open palm, cutting it deep, and she opens her hand to let the blood fall onto the warped floorboards of the South Sybil boarding house.
Damn.
That was truly terrible. I hate Hill. He's the worst. I mean, like, truly a horrific man. And I hope they end him. I hope they rip him asunder from one end to the other. Chapter 33. Truly, truly terrible. Red sky at night, witch's delight. Red sky at morning, witch's warning. A spell for storms requiring red cloth and wet earth. Beatrice Belladonna catches her sister's hand in hers before the blood falls. Saints, no, think, she hisses. What happens if you materialize a tower on top of this boarding house? Neither Agnes nor Juniper seem overly concerned about that. Juniper looks slightly eager, like a child anticipating fireworks. One thing you're not going to do is mess with Mama Agnes. I mean, truly. I bet she's going to mess him up real good. You are right, Naisa. Bella suppresses an urge to shake the pair of them until their teeth rattle. People live here. Lots of people live here. You can't just drop a library on top of those people. The mother only knows what it would do to our wards, and I still don't understand why we want to call the Lost Ways of Avalon in the first place. Because he took her. Agnes's voice is quiet but ragged and edged. It's like a distant scream. Who did? But Bella knows who. Gideon Hill. And he's scared, Belle. He has his shadows and his city and my daughter, but he's still frightened of something. Agnes looks up at her. Of Avalon, even though all the books are burned. Bella presses her fingertips into the paper-dry petals of the rose in her pocket, the only thing that she saved from the ashes. He asked me if they were still there, and I thought, who's they? Sometimes, when it's real quiet at Avalon, I heard voices, or I thought I did. Juniper speaks slowly, feeling her way toward the edge of impossible. And down in the deeps, I heard somebody. She doesn't look at Bella as if she expects scorn or pity, but Bella's quiet. She's remembering the times when she was alone in the rose-scented silence of the tower, or when her attention wandered, and she heard whispers murmuring and scuttling in the shadows, words spoken in voices of dust and ivy, there and gone again. There's a rustle of wool as Cleo shifts on the bed. Do you mean ghosts? Bella feels a rush of relief that Cleo seems... Oh, sorry, this is Cleo. Do you mean ghosts? Bella feels a rush of relief that Cleo seems willing to entertain the possibility rather than edging quietly out of the room. I don't think they could be. What ghosts would last for like 400 years? Ghosts were lingering specters, especially tenacious souls that clung to life a few hours beyond their death. They didn't haunt towers or castles for centuries, except in old wives' tales and rumors. Cleo just shrugs. Well, some kind of spirit or memory then, perhaps preserved by... I don't care what they are and what they aren't. I'm gonna find them. Agnes touches her damp dress front and reaches for the floor with fingers slick with milk. Wait, no, please! Bella catches Agnes's hand in her free one so that she stands between her sisters with their fists tight in hers. I'll help you, but not here. Where then? Agnes's voice suggests that they ought to decide quickly. Where can they call a burned black tower back into existence without being seen and caught? Where in New Salem is free of both inquisitors and innocents? Okay. And then Bella remembers fleeing from the north side just that previous week, pausing at the padlocked gates of Centennial Fair, and it had closed after the election, but deconstruction was delayed in the name of the city's crisis. The site of that long boulevard, empty except for crows and scattered puddles reflecting the blind gray of the September sky. It had sent shivers of melancholy down Bella's spine. The fair, she breathes, and her eyes cross Cleo's for a moment, and the memory of that June afternoon blooms between them, shimmering and sweet, and then swayed together in the glass cage of the Ferris wheel. Bella feels a surge of regret that she wasted those precious moments on worry rather than wringing out every ounce of joy from this world while she still could. And Bella sees some of her own wistful hunger reflected in Cleo's face before she stands and places her derby hat neatly on her head. Her chin lifts. Well, shall we, Mrs. Eastwood? Bella tries to tell Cleo that she ought to run, that she doesn't have to follow them this far into madness, but the words lodge like swallowed stones in her throat, and instead she finds herself reaching for Cleo's hand as the four of them sweep down the steps of the South Sybil and out into the dying day. The nearest entrance to the railroad is 2 blocks east down a set of stone steps through a door reading, Miss Judy's Tea Shop, closed. Cleo shows the door her patterned scar, and it opens into the cool darkness. They follow the tiger's eye of Cleo's witchlight in silence, and Bella thinks about the hands that carved like tunnels, like veins beneath the cities. Their bodies laboring and unseen, unfree. She thinks of the ways people make for themselves when there are no ways, the impossible things that render possible. She looks at the white of Agnes's knuckles and begins, just a little, to believe. They emerge from the outhouse door on the north side. It's after curfew, and every door is locked tight, every curtain is drawn, and there's no one to notice 4 women filing through the alleys with familiars winging beside them. No one to hear the steady clack of a black yew staff across cobblestones, no one to see them pause beneath the high arch of the fairground entrance, or to wonder how they opened the gate despite the stout iron padlock and the heavy chains around the bars. They could hardly have chosen a better setting for the summoning of undead spirits. The bones of the fair hulk around them like the remains of some prehistoric creature. The Ferris wheel, skeletal and dark, the sagging strings of light bulbs, the empty stands and tents
canvas flapping in the wind. The only sound is the dry capering of old tickets across the boulevard and the cawing of crows. The sun seems to be graying rather than setting, as if someone is wrapping a stained gauze around it, but the tower would still be far too visible. We should wait for full dark. Bella's voice sounds eerie and echoes. Why not make our own dark? Juniper withdraws. A red-dyed handkerchief comes out of her pocket, and she spits into the dirt at her feet and whispers to the wet earth, Red skies at night, witch's delight. And she calls the storm, and it answers. Above them, clouds darken like bruises, watching crows go silent and vanish into the blackening sky behind them. Strix and Pan circle, visible only by the firelight of their eyes. How's that? Juniper's face is flushed now with the heat of witching, her eyes shining. Good enough for me. Agnes kneels on the cold stone and lays her hand and candle stubs and matchsticks in a circle for a second time. And Bella and Juniper kneel beside her, and Agnes lets 3 drops of thin milk fall into the circle. Juniper scrapes her bloody palm against the ground, and the wind rises. It lifts their hair from their shoulders, 3 shades of black tangling together, and it buffets the wings of the owl and the hawk high above them. The first time Bella worked the spell, she was in her office in Salem College Library, foolish and alone. The second time was with Cleo in the wild ruins of Old Salem, full of desperate hope. And now she's here in the empty fairgrounds with her sisters and her lover and her familiar, and they have whatever is left behind when hope fades, a scorched, enduring thing like the earth after a wildfire. But it will have to be enough, and Bella holds her hands out to her sisters, and Juniper frowns. Is this part of the spell? No, Bella admits, and Juniper's hand closes tight around hers, and the lines between them seem to sing like a string of a finely tuned instrument, and Bella's tears slide cinder-hot down her cheeks and splash silently into the circle. They speak the words together, a children's song about wayward sisters and lost crowns, a rhyme too dangerous to be written down, which was whispered and sung and stitched in secret, passed in pieces through centuries, and Bella thinks of the faint verse that she found written in the back of a children's and household witch tales, placed there by a different pair of sisters, and she wishes she could thank them. The heat strikes and catches behind their ribs, and the Eastwoods speak their words. They draw 3 circles with their edges overlapping, and the heat becomes a flame that blazes bright. Agnes's will is an anvil, an avalanche, cold and inevitable. Her fisher hawk screeches a war cry, and Strix echoes him, their eyes scorching the sky. Just at that moment, Bella thinks her skin will split and crack with heat, and then it's done. The tower stands in the unnatural dark of New Salem's fairgrounds. Gray curls of ash drift and shush around their skirts. Burnt branches crisscross above them, and on the ground between them, 3 circles glow white. Bella bends, scooping ash and earth into a glass jar, and she works the binding, and Cleo works the banishing, and then, with a faint snick of silver shears cutting the air, the tower vanishes again, tucked neatly into nowhere, like a handkerchief folded back into a pocket. Cleo slides the scissors back into her pocket. There, now hurry. I'm sure someone saw something, even with the clouds. I don't intend to be here when they come looking. Agnes and Juniper are already crouched again above the drawn circles. Their faces are white and ghoulish in the eerie light, like a penny paper illustration of wicked witches leering above a bubbling cauldron. And Bella hisses, looking at Cleo with her cloak rippling down the autumn wind and a hand tight around a glass jar. Thank you, Bella says softly, but it's inadequate. I'll wait for you back at South Sybil. Cleo attempts one of her brash smiles, but it warps beneath the worry and wait. Her lips are warm against Bella's wind-chilled cheek, and then she's gone. And a few moments later, a whispered rhyme, a twist in the air, and the fairgrounds are entirely empty. A passerby has been there once, might peer through the iron gate and notice nothing, but an unusual number of crows are gathered there on the electric line, and the rooftop and a faint wild smell of ash and rose on the wind. Agnes didn't see Avalon after the fire, but she saw the bloody color of the sky as it burned and breathed the smoke of 1,000 burning books. She isn't surprised to find herself standing in the ruin, a charred door beneath her hand, and a desolate tower looming above her. Yet beneath the dead smell of ash and fire, there's a wetter, greener kind of scent, and she steps back from the door and sees tendrils of green snaking up the smoke-blackened stones, rose vines sprouting tiny buds and pale thorns, grass reaches tender fingers up through the ash, and moss creeps like green velvet over the scorched roots of trees. The only sounds are the rustles of wings and the pant of their breath. Is Agnes imagining this? Is her heart conjuring hope out of nothing? The soft, secret murmurs of women's voices, and Juniper stomps her foot on the ground as if she's knocking on a door. Hey, you ghosts, you wake up! Bella makes a strangled sound. They aren't ghosts, June. I already said that. And even if they were, I hardly think that shouting at them would be effective. Yeah, well, what's your plan then, eh? Agnes answers. What's the matter? Yeah. Little girl Blue. There's a short silence until Bella says tentatively, well, I'm not sure what my plan is, but there's a spell for rousing the sick or sleeping. I'm not sure that it has the strength to wake lost souls from the dead, but even if such souls do exist, well, perhaps if we modified it somehow and we added certain words, or maybe if we added stronger ways. But Agnes is already bending to the earth, laying her palm among the soft green shoots of grass. I don't know what the words and ways will matter much. She hears Bella make a small librarian-sounding objection. Well, maybe they matter, or maybe they matter, but not as much as will matters. Agnes swallows once really hard, and I promise you, I don't lack the will right now, she says. Her sisters speak the spell with her. Little girl Blue, come blow your horn. There's a little of Mama Mag's lingering in the words, her sparrow-bright eyes and her tobacco-stained teeth, and Agnes wishes that she could call her spirit up from wherever she sleeps or drifts and just cry once more against Mama Mag's breast. Her sisters stumble at the final line, uncertain who they're waking, but Agnes fills in the gap. Maiden, mother, and the crone, awake and arise, and whistles, and sharp and high sound comes. It's like a small spell, like Bella said, a hedge witch's cure for a drowsy babe or a touch of devil's fever. But Agnes feeds her will into it until her skin burns and her blood boils, until the magic sinks down into the black earth of nowhere, and it finds a silent pulse and a secret, a whisper. The sisters fall silent. The heat wicks away from Agnes's flesh. Well, did it work? Juniper's voice rings too loud into the hush of nowhere, and Agnes ignores her, still reaching after that secret whisper in the dark, but it's gone, vanished. Tears slick her eyes, blurring the gray-green earth before her. But then, gone. All of it, after all that work. Disgraceful what they've done to the place. The voices are querulous and strange. Their accents are lilting and lisping. Just on the other side of the tower door. One of them shushes the other one, and then, well, in our day, eavesdropping could get your ears turned to parsnips and your lips sewn shut. Come in if you're coming in. James Juniper is the wild sister. She's fearless as a fox and curious as a crow, so she goes first into the tower. Inside, she finds a ruin, snow drift of ash and char, and skeletons of the staircase still clinging to the walls, greasy soot blackening every stone. And there's 3 women. There's a strangeness to them, a blurred shine in the moonlight moving on water, but it seems to fade even as Juniper watches, until they're as real and solid as the stone beneath their feet. The first thing Juniper thinks is that none of them look like their storybook illustrations. They're either uglier or maybe more beautiful. She really can't tell which. Riddled with scars and specks and the small imperfections that divide the real from the make-believe. And in the drawings, the 3 are always like a matched set, a single woman caught and preserved at 3 different ages perhaps. Sometimes they're sisters, sometimes they're a grandmother and a daughter and a mother. Sometimes, Juniper thinks, that the woman standing in the tower are unlikely to share any ancestors beside the first witch herself. One of them is gnarled and gold, with white streaked hair and delicate lines of script tattooed across the veins on the back of her hands. Her robes are wide-sleeved and monkish, and black as ink. One of them is beautiful and brown, with scars stippling her cheeks, and a sword strapped acrosswise on one shoulder. Her armor is overlapping scales shining black as old blood. One of them is pale and fey, with ivory antlers sprouting from matted dark hair and yellowed teeth strung in a necklace around her throat. Her dress is ragged and torn, black as the moonless night. She meets Juniper's eyes, and Juniper feels a thrill of recognition. Juniper always loved maiden stories the best. Maidens are supposed to be sweet, soft creatures whose braid daisy-crowned down and turn themselves into laurel trees rather than suffer the loss of their innocence. But the maiden is none of those things. She's the fierce one, the feral one, the witch who lives free in the wild woods. She's the siren and the selkie, the virgin and the Valkyrie, Artemis and Athena. She's the little girl in the red cloak who doesn't run from the wolf, but walks arm in arm with him deeper into the wood. Juniper knows by the savage green of her eyes and the vicious curve of her smile. An adder drapes over her shoulder like a strip of dark velvet, like the carved yew of a snake of Juniper's staff that's come to life. Juniper smiles, and it could be the maiden's own smile, sharp and white, mirrored back across the centuries. Agnes Amaranth is the strong sister, steady as the stone and twice as hard, and she walks second into the tower. She never liked mother's stories much. They make her think of her own mother, and she wished that she'd been someone else, someone who would have sent their daddy running for the hills. Okay. The first time that he raised a hand against her, someone like the mother herself. Oh yeah? Are we waking up? We're almost done. Someone like the mother herself. Mothers are supposed to be weak, weeping creatures, women who give birth to their children and drift peacefully into death. But this mother is none of those things. She's the brave one, the ruthless one, the witch who traded the birthing chamber for the battlefield, the kitchen for a knife. She is bloody Boudica and heartless Hera, the mother who became a monster. None of those stories mention the oiled brown of her skin or the smooth line of scars along her cheeks, but Agnes knows her by the iron set of her jaw and the unyielding line of her spine. A black python wraps around one of her arms, heavy-bodied and red-eyed, and Agnes bows her head, and the mother bows back to her, like two soldiers meeting in battle. Beatrice Belladonna is the wise sister, quiet and clever as an owl in the rafters. She walks last into the tower. She never believed in crone stories, and even as a girl, she was determined long ago that the crone was an amalgamation of myths and fables, an expression of collections of fears rather than an actual old woman. The old women are supposed to be doting and addled, absent-minded grandmothers who spoil their sons and keep soup bubbling on the stovetop. But the crone is none of those things. She's the canny one, the one who's knowing, too wise of a witch who knows the words to every curse and the ingredients for every poison. She's Baba Yaga and Black Anna. She's the witch fairy who hands out curses rather than christening gifts. Bella knows her by her fingertips, ink stained, tattooed with words, a dozen dead languages. A delicate asp coils around one wrist. Well met, Miss Eastwood. Her voice is dust and honey, her ancient patchwork together from hundreds of languages living and dead. Took you long enough. That's the antlered woman, and a voice like snake's teeth and briars. Well, Juniper shrugs, we were busy. And you were dead. The maiden mistakes the hissing sound as if the complaint is a very foolish one. The mother intercedes with voice like iron. Why have you woken us? What is it that you need? She looks at Agnes as she asks. Her eyes are tracing the milk stains down her blouse. There's a darkness in her face that makes Bella think of sharpened blades. Help, says Agnes, before she buries her face in both of her hands and begins to sob.
was shit. If I did not have a meeting with Patreon in half an hour, we would be finishing another chapter right now. Oh my gosh. Maybe there is hope after all, you guys. Maybe there is hope after all. I mean, not only for the story, but for us, right? Here in this world. Maybe there's hope after all. Hello? Is there hope? Is there hope after all? Maybe. My in-laws are in town, Roxy, so I don't know. I can't make any promises on that. But I am gonna go to this meeting. It's like a monthly Patreon meeting that certain creators have if they were put into like what do you call it, like beta groups for new features and stuff. So I always make sure I go to these meetings. Yeah, no, it's a great thought. I wish I could do it every day. I always make sure I go to these Patreon meetings so that our Patreon can have all the new features first. Like, remember, we got chats early and things like that. They did, and they are. Your reactions are exactly why I blew through this book. I know. It's crazy, right? What a crazy, amazing book. Trisha, are you going to join us for the next one? We have some really great books that are similar to this coming up for this. I mean, I know you can't join every day, but like you can listen on what do you call it? Anyway, I'm going to go because I do have that meeting, but I will report back and we will read more tomorrow. Maybe we can get through an extra chapter tomorrow because we are getting to something good finally. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys. I know.